Okay, so let's think about this for a minute. So apparently this is this signature guitar. It's the first time I've played it today. I've had the prototypes, but they gave me this one today. It's pretty cool, actually. There's some things about it that aren't the same as what I thought it was going to be. But I think it's a good guitar overall. It's expensive, but it's like good, I think. I've been playing it. What's that?
What's the brand?
It's PV, strangely enough. But they came to me about 3 years ago. It was like I had taken 2 or 3 years off, I guess. We had a baby, and I thought, you know, all those books that tell you how to not raise an asshole tell you that you're supposed to take the first 3 years off so you can bond with the infant. So I did, and I did construction, and I started a studio that failed and lost a lot of money. But through starting the studio, I met Mike. There's Mike back there. Hey, everybody. Mike worked the studio with me, and he played drums on Ghost, and he's been kind of like the left hand this whole time, right? So, hi Mike. Remember that first day? First day I met Mike, we moved into this horrible little studio, which was like a duplex in the middle of nowhere, and we bonded by lifting a 10,000-pound cast iron stove out of the living room and then dragging it down the street in the back of my truck, and I thought, yeah, we should go on tour. Yeah, I'm just probably just gonna ramble here for a while, so if that's okay, you know, and if it's not, just you can just stop me, because I'm sure it's, you know, gonna be, in my opinion, more interesting than talking about guitar stuff, which we will do eventually, I promise, right? But yeah, during that 3 years of stopping there, I thought, no, I'm not gonna play music anymore, because I had done a lot of drugs, like, you know, like basically nothing heavy, just like mushrooms and smoking weed and drinking wine and all this stuff. But then realized that it was just, it really turned me into an asshole, you know, with my parents and my family and my wife and everybody. It was just like, I was just really like a goof for a long period of time. So I decided to stop smoking, stop drinking, then I decided that I wasn't going to play music anymore. Of course, right, what an idiot. I just must be feeding on the drama. I'm like, oh yeah, I'll just stop. There'll be no more music. And of course that didn't work out, so we ended up having to make up for lost time and doing 4 records instead now, right? Anyway, PV called me, and he says, you know, you should quit producing all these shitty bands, and you should get back to making music. And I'll always thank Chris Kelly and PV for making that, you know, apparent to me. And they said, we want to do a signature guitar with you. And I was like, oh, okay, that's incredibly flattering. And, you know, it's going to be a Telly. You know, made out of wood with no finish, you know, and single coil pickups. They're like, yeah, no, for sure, it sounds good. Before we do that though, we should do a metal guitar. I was like, yeah, no, for sure, but just so you know, I've been trying to sort of like move away from being exclusively metal. Like, no, for sure, we'll get to the Telly. So here we are 3 years later, and this is what we created. And it comes in a coffin. So, things don't always work out as you plan them, I'll tell you that. But it's a really cool guitar, actually. It's really, really cool. It's just not a wood grain Telly, but for metal, I've been using it pretty much. Well, I have been using it exclusively, and it's pretty cool because it's so thick, right? Like it's like a big old Les Paul type of thing, and yeah, it's like a rhythm log. You know, it's something that while you're playing, you can pretend you're like, you know, fighting off trolls at the, you know, the gates of Mordor or something. You know, headstock and all that stuff. There, revealed my nerdism was right there. I've been in open C tuning since I heard Led Zeppelin 3. It's probably about 11 years old, I guess. And the song Friends, it was like, I remember hearing that, going, that's the greatest song I've ever heard in my life. You know, it was all whole tone and all this sort of stuff. So I tried to learn it in standard, and I was like, that guy's incredible. This is the best guitar player I've ever heard in my life. How does he do that? So it's just always an open C. I'm like, ah, he's kind of shitty, actually. And so am I, so this could work out really great. And then as I started working, I realized that, because I remember having this like existential crisis at the age of 8, where I was like, should I be a singer or a guitar player? It's like I had to choose, right? Because me and my buddies had some shitty band together that, you know, we kept talking about being in the, but we didn't know how to play, and we didn't play, right? But we were a band, right? So we walk around the schoolyard, call ourselves Manta, because we found it in a dictionary after the fact. It's like, oh, it means a cloak. We're like, okay, our first record's gonna be called "Living Under the Cloak." Then when we all started actually getting instruments, like our parents, like, you know, I mowed lawns for like 2 years and bought some shitty guitar, and the other guitar player, his parents bought him a guitar, cock. And then we all realized that none of us knew how to play, and he didn't want to play, and then I think the bass player got laid for the first time, and he was out, you know what I mean? It was like, but at that point I was like, I can't decide if I want to be a guitar player or a singer. And then finally I was like, well, I better sing because everybody else is too embarrassed to sing. And then I realized I couldn't fret all the chords in standard and sing at the same time because it was like too hard. So Zeppelin Friends came back into the picture, and I was like, well, if I do this, I can do like that. You know, I could be like the whole just bar chord thing became like really cool, right? But I also find with open C, okay, so if you're not a total jackass and you're playing a normal guitar without a 7th string, which for this situation I'm definitely a jackass. The tuning is C, G, C, G, C, E, right? So it's just an open C major chord, right? And you know, if you ended up doing a tour with Meshuggah and saying, I want to do that too, then you put a 7th string on it, and I put it down to a G. Apparently I tune it sharp too. So it's just a 5th below. So in this tuning, like, you know, if I want to do power chords or whatever, on the 7th string, it's like this, hi guys, hi. I hope you've got enough guitars for everyone. It's just me trying to be a cock and succeeding. So in this low tuning here, so there's your 5th, there's your like power chord thing on the low string, right? Just like normal, except apparently you got to tune it. Wait. Clean tone is the way to go for me. I write, everything I write is with a clean tone, because I do so much layering that if you've got a wall of distortion that you're riffing along with, it's really hard to sort of see into it. So usually I just use a clean tone with a lot of echo, and then, you know, every note with the echo, it's like your next series of ideas has to react to the one before. So if you're with echo on it really is like what I use. And at home I got like a little tube amp and a delay, and that's it, right? Live I've got this fractal axe effects and a bunch of, my rack was like a Christmas tree, right? But essentially I've got to represent 25 records worth of shit, so you know I can't do it with a tube amp and a delay pedal, as much as that would be nice, you know. Where was I? Talking about tuning. All right, talk about wandering mind, man, holy cow. So where was I? All right, so explaining the technical elements of it. All right, so there's a power chord, right? And then if you're playing your normal power chord shape, in the rest of the tuning it becomes suspended. I don't know that for real, but someone tells me that, right? So I basically suspend everything. I think there's some sort of like emotional implication for that being something you're predisposed to. If you suspend everything, you know, you're either afraid of release or you're afraid of, you know, conclusions. That's right. But in this tuning, suspended, right? And so a lot of the songs that I write, like all this stuff, like, you know, Storm, and all the music I write is basically those chords, right? Those big suspended things. And so that's my tuning. And when I was about 17, or I guess 16, 15 or so, when I was 30, when I was in my teens, I decided that because I wasn't getting laid, the bass player got laid, the bass player got laid, but I wasn't. I decided that the best thing for me to do would be to invest a lot of personal energy into, you know, learning how to play fast, you know. So I got into all the Yngwies and Steve Vais and Paul Gilberts and all that shit, and I could do all the legato stuff really well, you know, sweeping and all that shit. But I like, I couldn't alternate pick. I couldn't do the Paul Gilbert stuff, right? So I could fake it, but I could never really do it. But I got into that for a while, and then right at the tail end of that, I was about 16 years old, and I got into Godflesh. And decided that, man, all the rest of that stuff is like incredibly annoying. It's like, you know, Charlie Brown typing a letter, right? It's like, and then that year I got a call from Steve Vai, ironically enough, right after I was finished listening to his stuff, right? And so I came down with like a massive chip on my shoulder, right? Because it's like wanting to be heavy and all this sort of stuff. And so I got signed to Relativity Records, and first song I think on my demo was this song. Well, it became Velvet Kevorkian off of City, and then they signed me, and then they brought me to Steve Vai's place in Lake Tahoe, and I met him, and we got along. We did, but I was young and he was older, and he asked me to sing for his music, and I was like honored, of course, right? But I was just like, I don't know, man. I'm sort of not into that style anymore. And then he brought me down, and I just didn't like the music. I just, you know, I couldn't get behind it. And the LA situation that I encountered was just so profoundly strange. You know, I went down with stars in my eyes thinking, oh, it's all about like the connection to the infinite, and, you know, music is this, you know, universal vibration that like keeps us together and like binds us and falls. I went down there, it was fake abs and fucking douchebags and just like perpetual summer, and yo bro, I think you guys are fucking really good, man. You should come over to my place and check out my band, right? And I was like, I don't get this. I don't get this at all. The guy I moved in with at the time, his name's Mark Cimino. He played on the Addicted show there, and he was from New York, and he picked me up, and he was Steve Vai's assistant at the time. And he was like, just so you know, everybody here sucks. And I was like, what do you mean? He's like, you're gonna hate it here. And I was like, oh, okay. So about a week later, we moved in together and talked shit about everybody, madly, for about a year. We did the Tonight Show, that Jay Leno thing, and everybody was such idiots, man. Him and I, we just like wiped our ass on Jay Leno's desk, and I like, you know, stuck the guy's phone up my ass, and like just, I was like 19, and I thought that was like the best response to like being powerless, was to like put shit on things. Now at the ripe old age of 40, that doesn't quite have the same effect. As a 40-year-old ass is a lot different than a 19-year-old ass, you know what I mean? So yeah, and then I toured with Steve, and we did like all the Aerosmith stuff, and then I met the Wild Hearts, actually, on tour with Steve Vai, and Ginge and Danny and everybody, and they were like taking things and being assholes, and I was like, I want to hang out with these guys. That's much more where my mind is at this point. And so I made Steve's life really difficult for a couple years. And then I came over, and Wild Hearts made my life difficult for a couple years. And then I made their life difficult for a couple years, and now I think we're all friends again. It's very interesting. And since that time, I've just been writing. I've got 25 records out or so, and it's all been in open C tuning, man. And I think I'm going to segue here with a complete lack of grace to how this tuning works. How's that? Because I keep being reminded here that, oh, all right, this is a clinic, guitar clinic. All right, okay. I'm gonna play shit. All right, so here I am, switching it and making it seem like I've really got something to say about guitar, which I guess I do, but all right, ladies and gentlemen. So in my open C tuning, it works as thus. This is an octave. So is this. So is this. So is this. So's that, right? And I use octaves on almost everything I write because it implies whatever tonality you want, right? So if you're doing, that could be anything, right? If you just make the octaves huge, like your low end, your guitar, multi-track your guitars, add some effects to it, put keyboards on it, make everything an octave, then the vocals can make it, or it can make it, right? Or even, all right? So basically, I start with octaves, and like almost everything I write is just based on that. baritone. And I usually write on either a Strat or a Telly. Like I got like a really old kind of ESP Telly I've been using since, gosh, since '92, I guess. I got this Eric Johnson Strat that's just like single coil. The lower output, the pickups, like the easier it is for me to write, right? So I tend to write a lot on acoustic as well because they've got no output pickups. But on this guitar, we dropped a single coil in there just to kind of give it like a semblance of a clean sound, right? It's not really like practical for recording or anything, but it's good. Like, I mean, what we got here, it's usable, right? So EMG were kind enough to make this prototype single coil EMG thing with the words, the letters EMG on it here. So hooray for EMG, I guess, right? Woo! Endorsements, that's another thing, man. Holy crap. Because it's like, you get all this free gear, all of a sudden you're at this point when you're like 18 years old, and someone says, hey, we're gonna give you tons of free gear, you would just like masturbate for a week. And all of a sudden, I've been doing this for 20 years, they're like, here's a ton of gear, man. And I'm like, yeah, can I sell any of that? Because, you know, rent's due. And I know, no, you can't sell it. But here's a ton of shit, right? So I've just been given, over the past couple of years, immense amounts of gear, like ludicrous amounts of gear. And I always go back to using the shit that I bought. You know? I mean, there's something practical about like playing your stuff live and everything, and this guitar has been a very, you know, it's a good thing for me to play live. It's heavy and it looks good, well, it looks interesting, and it's like, you know, but the endorsement thing's crazy because you think, oh, they're giving me gear, this is great, now I can just go off and do my thing, but there's strings attached, right? There's always strings attached. It's like you have to tell everybody that this is the greatest thing since sliced bread. You have to make videos telling everything that it's just the greatest thing ever, right? And I have a real hard time like lying to folks about these things. So like with this, we spent a lot of time fighting and arguing over it, and I really do like this. I think it's cool. You know, I recommend it, right? But you know, the other guitars didn't work for me, so I ended up using my Strat for the Strat things, and I used my Telly for the Telly things. I used a Les Paul for the Les Paul things, right? And it's an interesting dynamic that comes together. You know, I'm using this Axe FX for my main sound, and the thing's incredible. It's like, really, it's incredible. But it's not romantic. You know, I'm not gonna sit in my living room and like fire up the old Axe FX, you know, and, like run it through my trusty old Mackie HD 1221s, right? On stage, perfect, right? But at home, I just want like a little glowing heater, you know what I mean? And like some funky old delay, right? But I think if you're gonna use something, you gotta use it because you think it's cool, right? And it's like, a bunch of the stuff that I use, I think is awesome, but for certain purposes only, right? So there's that. Okay, wait, seeking back into like guitar land again here. Okay, so scales, so you showed you octaves, right? And how that implies the tonality. Implies the tonality. It's pretty good, isn't it? Sounds like I know what I'm talking about. You know, it's funny, like when we were learning all this other shit, Dave, the guitar player, and Mike, you went to university for music too, didn't you?
Yeah.
Yeah. See, so they know. And like when we did deconstruction recently, Mike was there for that too. He did all the transcribing for the choir stuff, and he was there and the whole thing. But I wrote the music, and I wrote the choir parts, and I did it all in Pro Tools, but I don't know theory, right? So Mike and this guy Florian had to take all of my horrible demos and figure out what the hell it was, and then they wrote it out, and Mike's like, what's the choir saying there? And I'm like, I don't know, man, like something about boners or cheeseburgers or something. So we went to Prague, and we've got like 70 musicians there, and they're all curmudgeon-y, and they've got, you know, 300-year-old cellos and all this shit, and they're playing all the music. And all of a sudden there's this one note that got transcribed wrong. I'm like, no, that's actually, it shouldn't be that. They're like, what should be? That should be, well, it should be, And they're like, which note is that? And I'm like, 7th fret. And they're like, what? They don't know what fret. And I'm like, well, they're like, what tuning in? I'm like, well, it's C, G, C, G. So 7th fret would be, so C, D, E, F, G. So it'd be a G, right? And these poor orchestra people is like, oh, God. Same thing when we went to the choir session. We did that in Amsterdam. We got all these people that are like, you know, and they had the sopranos. Which for those of you who may not know, soprano means really high singing ladies. So they were there, and the lyrics in this one part, I got this one song called Pandemic, and like the whole idea with deconstruction was to make a complicated record about how stupid I think complicated music is, right? And so we had to get orchestras and choirs and everything on it, and we got the then we had to get the ladies to sing about farting too, right? It was just like this like 45-year-old lady. She said, "Excuse me, yes, what is this line about?" I'm like, "Well, the song's called Pandemic, and it's about this disease that's spread through flatulence, right? So you have to be like, pandemic, I farted, and just give her on the F, right?" And she's like, "Well, never." I was like, "Yes, you have." I don't know. I think it's like the whole idea of making music for me is about like trying to, be cathartic. But these 4 records have definitely been about like trying to make a very clear, well, maybe not very clear, but to me, a very clear sort of explanation as to how I kind of found myself where I am now after the drugs and after strapping and after Vi and all this shit, right? So, but through it all, I'm still in C tuning, and I still like a clean sound. And the first signature guitar I've released, ladies and gentlemen, which is an excellent product, is so far from what I thought it was going to be. It's absolutely unbelievable, but it's really good. And I've been using it for a couple of years, so hey. So, now what do you do at a clinic? You know, right? What do people usually do? They just like wank and really?
Yeah.
They actually think people care? Really? Oh my God, should I do that? Do you want me to like play a bunch of wanky shit? No? Thank you. Dude, nice, buddy. I'll play some nice stuff though, eh? Let's work on that riff some more, wait. When I'm writing, I usually do 3 riffs at a time because my attention span doesn't last longer than that. So there would be the first one. All right, so here we go. We'll write a song, okay? So it goes second one was make it minor. That's not going to work. Because basically what I do as well is I follow the echoes where they want to go. So it should be like a... Because then you can still keep that one. Because it lends itself to go back to the C. So at the end of the... See what I mean by following the echoes? Because when that last note goes, the vocals can hold that note still. Right? So, there's the second lick. It'll be simple as that. A riff. I don't know the difference. I guess a lick would be like a... Now we need a chorus, right? I always think for chorus, specifically recently, you gotta think about a flower opening up. Something super triumphant, right? Triumph over adversity, right? So in this case, going from a minor to a major would be cool. Let's see. Seems. hear the drums would be like a just in the chorus, because it's got sort of like a driving down a freeway riff, and then you could basically even write about that. It's like as simple as that. You just follow where it leads. It could be about driving, right? So something about like, be about the drive to do something, right? And then from there, it's like everything just complements itself. And then I would record that, and then I'd forget about it, honestly. But I'd finish it first. And then I always finish it, right? Because if you don't, you're going to go back and you're not going to be in the same frame of mind, and you're going to be like, oh, if we only had one more riff. And at the time when you were writing, you're just like, but that riff sucks, just do it anyway, because it's part of the moment then. And when you revisit it later, you may find that it's like, I never realized it was as appropriate as it is, and you can put a melody over it or whatever. But I've got immense amounts of songs, right? And I don't, it's not like I don't question it, because there's always a process. But I mean, they say like to become a professional at something, you have to put in 10,000 hours, and man, checked. You know what I'm saying? So it's like, you know, my subconscious sort of connection to music is very strong, in my opinion, and it allows me to like sort of delegate whether or not something is worth pursuing versus something that's just total shit, right? So I've got, that's not to say on those hard drives full of songs I don't have some that are just total shit, because man, I got some shitty songs that you guys haven't heard, and some that you have, to be honest, right? But I think, you know, for me, like the connection to making music is very much like it's a cathartic representation of where I find myself in life. And after these 4 shows that we've just done, there's a sense of relief. There's a sense of foreboding as well, because it went relatively well, and there's implications from that, right? It's like nothing's for free, right? You can like, you know, the reason why guitar companies and amp companies and all these people are like, hey, you have a bunch of shit, is because I'm visible, right? And when you're visible, yet you're making music that's based on like an emotional connection to your environment, you're playing with fire in a lot of ways, right? But when I was doing strapping, the reason why I balked at that, the reason why I stepped away from strapping, is the writing was on the wall for me. I was like, this could become relatively successful, and if it is, you are accountable for everything that you are saying, even in the past, right? And with strapping, it was so rooted in like basically telling everybody to eat shit. You know what I mean? Like, fuck you, fuck everything, I want to see it burn, right? And then all of a sudden, I quit smoking weed and like had a baby, and just things changed. I was just like, well, not only do I not feel that way anymore, but in a lot of ways, that's a really easy way to perceive your environment, specifically when you're afraid, right? If you're terrified of your environment, if you're terrified of yourself, if you're terrified of love or commitment or all these things, the first reaction is just like, well, burn it. You know what I mean? Like, burn it with fire. That way we never have to perceive it. You know, let's go watch people, MMA, let's go watch fully grown men in their underpants punch each other in the face, you know? That'll make them tough, right? Like, so I think that it's like, for me, it's like, you know, conquering fears of your own music and your own processes are a lot more based on like just being honest with whether or not you actually are the person that you are, right? With strapping, yeah, when it first started and I was 23, I was like, yeah, fuck the world, right? But all of a sudden I met a bunch of really tough guys. Met a bunch of like tough people that were like legitimately involved in criminal activity, and I was like, I could never do that. It's just not me. Yet I'm waving it around like I'm one of these cats, you know? And it's like, I have respect for it, I have respect for them, but it's not me, right? And the sooner I think you figure out who you really are, then the sooner you can just start making music that's important, right? Maybe not to anybody else, but to yourself, right? So that's how we do a clinic in Canada. We talk shit relentlessly. Anybody want to ask me questions about things? I mean, I'll do whatever you want. This is like clinic time, right? Here's how we do it. Okay.
How heavy is the gauge on those?
This is a 60 through 10. 60, 52, 40 something, 30 something, 20 something, 13, 10. And I mean, because it's a 28-inch scale, it's like stiff enough to, you know, kind of keep it in tune, right? But I've been using that gauge for so long that, I mean, I'm just used to it, right? I can still do that. Oh, that's another thing to say. In open C, you can still do pentatonic scales. You know that, you know, the shitty scale that everybody does when it hits hot. But you know the scale that everybody does, the blues one, the one that standard looks like that. You know that one, right? You can still do it, except now it's. Oh, wait. So it's like as standard, but you can still do those. Convince people that you're doing that normally, right? Wait. Oh, that's feedback. That's not what I'm looking for. I'm looking for mix. There we go. Hey, another question. Preferably something technical, so I can pretend like I'm doing a guitar clinic. I was dreaming when I was a kid. I was like, I'm gonna go to Musicians Institute. I'll wank in a bit. It's super embarrassing, but you like it. Anybody? Come on. Yeah.
What acoustic guitar do you use?
I use an Alvarez Yairi. But that's something that I have been provided that is really excellent, actually. You know, I like this guitar a lot. I really like that Alvarez thing. What else do I like? I like the Axe effects. I like the Mackie stuff. I like the Planet Wave stuff. And these picks are pretty good. So,
that's the one you use on the Sunday?
Yeah, yeah, they're Alvarez. It's Yairi. Y-I-A-R-I, right? All right.